Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Doug Nolte, CEO of the Union Rescue Mission.
Well, thank you very much for allowing me to spend some time with you today. It is my distinct pleasure, and I really appreciate John's kind words, and he's right. We got some stories about animals. When I started in law enforcement in 1992, never in my wildest dreams did I think that I would one day be in charge of animal control. And I thought I had some great ideas, and soon found out that my great ideas were not as great as I thought. I had more controversy surrounding animal control issues. Things as simple as, well, don't take pictures of dogs in the kennel, wound up in the mayor's office on the front page news, and thousands of comments were made. So I learned very quickly that when you make decisions in a vacuum and you don't really think through those consequences, it can be kind of detrimental. And so I then had a great idea to have the Animal Control Board, and John was appointed to that, and we really had some fun at that point. So today I want to talk to you a little bit, and I've brought a guest. I want to introduce Kelly Cotton just real quick. He's going to come up here in a minute. He is one of our program guys at the Union Rescue Mission. But my hope today is that as we spend some time, I'll give you a little bit of idea of what's going on in the city of Wichita and this region in terms of issues related to homelessness and need and addiction, what the Union Rescue Mission is doing to address that, and how we're trying to partner and work with others. Weave that in with a little bit of my personal philosophy and experience. And then I want to turn it over to Kelly to just have a short time to explain what it actually means for a man that's involved in one of our programs at the Rescue Mission to be able to see some change and make some change. So again, in 1992, I started my career with the city of Wichita as a police officer. Now, I will tell you that it was not, I wasn't going, how can I make a difference? I'd gone on a ride along, and I was in college, and we went really fast, and I thought, this is cool, I want to do it. So the adage that police like to speed, well, it's true. In fact, any of you that have ever been cornered by Tim Potter called me one time and said, hey, you know, there was this accident. Unfortunately, we had injured an individual. And I said, Tim, everyone knows cops speed. We don't like it, but we know they do that. Well, that was the front page headline, and that wound me up in Chief Williams' office and the city attorney, both shaking their heads saying, you can't say that. I'm like, well, it's true, but you know, I think they saw bigger issues. And so I kind of spoke my mind. I was kind of the cop that could be flippant. I remember I got in trouble early on because someone asked me my name, and I told them I was Officer Friendly. Internal Affairs didn't think that was so funny. And so early on, it was a formative. Now, I'm from Wichita, and I thought I was kind of smart in the ways of the world. It wasn't until I was on the department that I had stopped an individual. Now I thought I was worldly and wise, but you never lied to the police. Just keep that in your mind. So one of the first car stops I made, I was with my field training officer, and I approached the car and I asked the gentleman, I need your driver's license, and he said, I don't have it. Oh, it's no problem. And I pulled out my notebook and wrote down his name and all his information, and we got on the radio and radioed it all in, and well, this person doesn't have any warrants. In fact, we couldn't find him, and no problem. And so I pull out my ticket book and I'm writing the ticket out, and my field training officer is just watching us, and I'm thinking, I'm doing such a great job. And he goes, how do you know that guy is who he says he is? I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, he doesn't have a driver's license. Well, no, he doesn't have anything to prove who he is. Well, I looked at my field training officer and said, well, he wouldn't lie to the police. I should have known when my field training officer kind of smiles, he goes, follow me. Gets up, gets out, goes up to the door of the car and says, sir, it's apparent to me that you're lying to us. Do you want to just come clean? Do you have warrants or suspended driver's license? And immediately he just, yeah, I have a suspended driver's license. And so I look at him and I just, with this incredulous look, said, I can't believe that anyone would lie to the police. Well, that has followed me around. The fact that I retired in January, my field training officer reminded me of that story. And so I was very green. I didn't understand how the world worked. I thought I knew a lot, as many young men and women starting out do. And so the police department really molded my understanding of what's going on in the community. You cannot do the job of law enforcement and go into people's homes night after night and see some of the things that are going on without having an appreciation that there are people that are just in desperate need. And so a lot of what I learned in those formative years in law enforcement were understanding that people weren't as advantaged as I may have thought they were, that they needed help, that there were circumstances that they were running into that were above, and no one was calling 911 because things were really going well. But the other part of it is that I really felt a need, how could I bring people into law enforcement? I always loved it when people would come and do a ride along with me because it was that aha moment. They could see what we were doing. They could see the challenges that we faced. And a lot of times that was where we were able to make those connections and move things from just kind of we can't solve it to how could we help you solve it. The police department, as it grew in the mid-90s, also was facing a lot of community issues. And the biggest one in the mid-90s was mental health. We knew that state hospitals were closing and that services to mentally ill people were not as readily available. And so what was happening is they were out on the streets and they were coming back into the communities, and we didn't have solutions for them. And so a problem that started bubbling up in the mid-90s because of fund cutting to these hospitals was impacting law enforcement. And I'm bringing you along because what I saw happening as I was advancing in my career is that 911 was now becoming the first stop of everyone. It wasn't just for emergencies. If you didn't know what to do, you called 911. And because officers were there to answer those calls, we were now put in those front lines of dealing with these issues that really weren't about law enforcement as much as they were about community needs. And so as we started looking at how do we as a police department start changing our operating practices so that we can meet the needs, we started looking for partners. Well, I want you to earmark the Union Rescue Mission there because as an officer and as a supervisor at 150 North St. Francis was where the Union Rescue Mission was until right after the 2000. And they were a partner that we could use. And I always remembered, I worked downtown, this was my area for a while, and if we had a man that was maybe drunk or didn't have a place to stay, staying under the bridge, and we needed to get them some help, we could always call the Union Rescue Mission. And that was very comforting to a lot of us as officers because what we always enjoyed were the services that we could just kind of hand someone off so we didn't have to, we knew they were safe, we knew they were being cared for, but we didn't have to worry about it ourselves. We didn't have to solve that problem. There was someone in the community. And Union Rescue Mission was that place. We could drop a man off at 2 o'clock in the morning and know that they were safe and they weren't going to be exploited or have problems. But that's really all I knew of the Union Rescue Mission. If you had a need, they somehow fixed it, but I didn't really follow through on what they were doing. But I always appreciated that, and there were so many other. I will tell you, Wichita, Kansas, in this area has so many social service agencies that want to reach out and partner, and that is a unique characteristic that you don't see a lot throughout other areas that I've had an opportunity to travel. So building up through all of this is that we knew that we had vagrants, we knew that we had homeless in our midst, and we knew that there was a need to help provide service for them. And as the police department developed, one of the challenges is that it was a blight issue. We had a lot of people that were homeless that were now camping on streets. They were camping on private property. They were bringing tents. They were bringing shopping carts with all their worldly possessions right there. And quite honestly, it didn't look very good. It was kind of a messy look, and it still is somewhat messy. But the police department was being tasked with, can you deal with it? And so our homeless outreach team was developed as a model out of Colorado Springs. And if you ever have an opportunity to look at what they're doing some phenomenal work. But I got to be honest with you, I got a little frustrated because there are 3 officers that are certified to enforce law enforcement, and they're working in homeless issues in the city of Wichita. And they do a fantastic, understand what I'm saying, they do a fantastic job. They are nationally recognized, the hardest working officers that you could possibly have, making a difference. But the issue is they are trained to be law enforcement officers, and now they're dealing with primarily homeless issues. To me, that's a significant problem because as I sat on the other side of it, I was heavily involved in the developing of the staffing study for the police department. And one of the issues that came up is obviously staffing and how do we deploy officers. And if there are 3 officers that were committing to homelessness, if we were able to somehow get those officers back into a patrol setting, that would then ultimately be a better deal for the city of Wichita in terms of just what we're able to accomplish. Well, now as you can see, I'd kind of grown up. I was in my 25th, 26th year of the police department dealing with this from a totally different perspective. And it's kind of like I liken it to a parent. As a kid, when you're on the street, you know how it's going to be. If you were the chief, you know what you would do. Well, now I was starting to be in the decision-making realm of where the chief was and advising him. And really what it came down to is that there are so many needs in the community, and law enforcement and 911 response is so driven to do that we've created somewhat of a dependency in our community that if you pick up the phone and dial 911, that your problems can be solved. And that's where kind of things for me changed. Again, knowing that there are plenty of resources out there, I really was looking at how do we build partnerships and work in law enforcement for those. It was August of last year, one of my tasks was to put the Citizen Review Board together. And the Citizen Review Board was something of an unknown because we had never done that here in Wichita, and had some really great citizens that have been on that board. And one of them was the executive director of the Union Rescue Mission at the time, Denny Bender. Well, Mr. Bender is quite the recruiter and a very a neat guy, very committed to helping on social issues and working. And I noticed that there was a job opening for his position. I thought something happened to Denny, and since I was a friend of Denny, I called him the next day and said, "Is everything okay?" And he goes, "Oh no, that's just I'm planning on retiring." He goes, "You ought to think about maybe putting in for the CEO job of the Union Rescue Mission." And I smiled and I was like, "Yeah, that's something to think about." And politely thought, "Not gonna do that." Long story short, I'm here, and God had a different plan for my life. And when God speaks to me, sometimes I can be a bit stubborn, but this was one that, as I explained it to people, I felt like if I didn't leave the police department and do this, he might just be done with me altogether and just take me out. So January 25th, I retired from the police department. And that was a phenomenal experience. Having that opportunity to sit and look at how local government works, be involved in it, see what's going on in Wichita, really has given me a unique perspective. And I'm just going to tell you, I did have an opportunity for several years to travel around the country in different communities, looking at different things that police departments and communities were doing to address different things. And Wichita is very unique. That we have so much positive stuff going on that I began to really become proud of the fact that we don't have a lot of the problems and issues that other cities have. And one of my big complaints is that sometimes in the city of Wichita, we don't recognize what really is going well. We got a lot of good things going on here. And we get a tendency to go, well, what are they doing over here? What are they doing over there? And we'll send people out, and we ought to do it like this, we ought to do it like that. And what my challenge to everyone that I'm around is, let's do it the way Wichita needs to do it. And let's understand what the issues are, and let's come together as a community and do that. So I come to the Union Rescue Mission. And by the way, I highly encourage any of you, if you can't make it to our tour today, to come and just visit us. We will give you a tour whenever you show up. It was the thing that kind of changed me. I told you I got into law enforcement because I went on a ride along. Well, as I kind of told Denny that I wasn't interested in being involved in the Union Rescue Mission, he goes, well, why don't you just come out and see what we're doing? I'm like, okay, it's a homeless shelter. There's beds. There's a meal hall. Really, what else am I going to go look at? But being the nice guy I am, I said, well, of course I'll come out. It was a deal changer for me, because what I saw going on in our community, in the campus at 2800 North Hillside, blew me away. And I knew if I didn't know about it, there were a lot of people that didn't know about it. And today, the bulk of the time, I want to talk to you about what we're doing out there and the excitement that is going on, because what we're trying to do is bring people, families together, and we're doing it by walking with them and getting those barriers out of the way, holding them accountable, and then getting them to a place where they can re-enter society in a positive, productive way. Because positive, productive citizens are what we need in the city of Wichita. So I go out there, and it's a fairly large campus. We own from about 27th Street to the electrical utility to the north, and it's an old nursing home. The nursing home was actually purchased by the mission to be opened up as a women's ministry, but at the time the women's ministry wasn't as defined as it is now. And so that was then a decision was made, because the number of men that we were sheltering overnight downtown at 150 North St. Francis was enough that we actually, at the time, the leader said we need to move the shelter from downtown out to 2800. So they closed the women's portion of it and moved the men out there. One of the challenges early on was, how does that look? How are we going to get men who have no transportation, no way out there, and get them to our location at 2800 North Hillside? So we started busing them. And today, one of the things that we're looking at is, how does that look in terms of a long-term model? Is that what we need to be doing? But we pick them up at Open Door, which is at 2nd and St. Francis, and we bus them down to 2800 North Hillside, and in the morning we bring them back. I will be honest with you, one of the challenges that our staff is looking at, and how do we deal with that, is the homeless issues, and a lot of what's going on in downtown Wichita needs to be addressed downtown here. We need to get our mission back in line. So a challenge for us over the next 12 months is, how do we move some of our operations from 2800 North Hillside down here? And it's exciting, but it's a challenge, because when you start saying things like, hey, we're going to move our shelter downtown, well, all of a sudden you start having people going, well, wait a second. But the challenge there is that if we are partners in this and we bring the right people to the table, then we create a solution that works for everyone. One of the keys that I recognize for what we need to do in the downtown area is that we need to get homelessness addressed to the degree that we can, where blight and some of the things that are going on that are affecting perception, development, and driving economic factors, we need to take responsibility for. And I personally don't believe that that's necessarily on the city of Wichita. That needs to be on service providers, recognizing that we need to step in and help that. That the developers aren't the evil people that are trying to push everyone out, but that we have to understand how we work with them and how they work with us can make a difference. We need to be collaborative in that. But we need to step up. And so those are the challenges that are facing Wichita, is that as we decide how do we want to attack what's going on, when you see someone that has a shopping cart full of stuff in downtown Wichita, how do we effectively get that person services and aid? And the reality of it is too, folks, is that I've met enough people, they just don't want help. You're not going to get them all. We are going to have someone that is not going to be wanting help. That doesn't mean we give up on them. But I will also tell you this, that the government oftentimes are the barriers. I've met so many people throughout my years as a government person that I remember talking with a lady. There was free money that was available to her. She was running a garden hose from the water meter of her home up to the spigot and kind of illegally running water into her house because the supply line was gone. And when we recognized what she was doing, we knew that the codes wouldn't allow that. It wasn't safe. Winter was coming on. This hose was going to freeze. It was a catastrophe waiting to happen. And we had money that the government had set aside to help this woman free of charge. And when it was a no-brainer to me, I kind of like, you don't lie to the police. Hey, the government's going to give you money. We went to her and we said, we got an opportunity. And she said, well, does the government have anything to do with it? Well, yeah, they're going to give you the money. She goes, I don't want it. What do you mean you don't want it? I don't trust the government. Well, you got to understand that out in the community, we have people that just don't trust government. And we've got to be really mindful of that if the government offers them something, they may not want it. But it's a lot different if Doug Nolte at the Union Rescue Mission comes out and says, you know what, have you ever thought about, considered this? And so we've got to be proactive in that, and we've got to be taking burden off government and working with them, understanding it, and dealing with it, but addressing those issues. So I will tell you that no matter how we move forward, there are going to be people that we need to really pay attention to and work with. But I also had an opportunity early in June to go out to Los Angeles. And Los Angeles is, if you're not aware, has an incredible homeless issue. In Los Angeles County alone, they've got about 50,000 homeless individuals living in different areas. Skid Row in Los Angeles is where I spent 2 days. I spent 2 days just in an area that was 53 blocks of nothing but blight, disease, and when I say disease, they had a police officer that contracted typhoid fever. The rats, we watched a rat just kind of gingerly walk past. I did find it a little bit interesting that one of my tour mates goes, "My, that's a big mouse," and all I could think is, that's a rat. And this rat wasn't in any big hurry as he just kind of looked at us and walked past. The drug deals, as a 20 some odd year veteran, I watched as we were getting ready to move out, a guy just pull out a bag of crack rocks, give one to a guy, put one in his pipe and smoke it right there, broad daylight in front of everybody. The police there aren't interested in dealing with that because they would no sooner get out of the parking lot of their station where they would be dealing with all these things. It's just a horrible, horrible condition. In fact, the director, the CEO of the Union Rescue Mission in Los Angeles, his name's Andy Bales. Several years ago, he was giving water out to several of the homeless out there, and he had a sore on his foot that got infected. And he had 3 or 4 different bacteria that got in there, and he's been amputated from the knee down because of just the disease out there. As they told us, don't wear open-toed shoes. I mean, we're talking, the conditions out there are horrible. It's not happening here in Wichita, Kansas, though. Not to that degree. We don't have rats running around our city. We don't have 53 blocks or anything that looks like that. But my concern is that while we can sit back and say, gosh, we don't have that, what we need to recognize is it could be somewhat of a degree of that here if we're not careful. And so I want to challenge my staff and everyone else that while we don't have to deal with what they're dealing in LA, and it is a crisis out there, it truly is. It's not a crisis here, it's manageable. But we've got to bring people together to address it. It's not the #1 issue in Wichita, Kansas. So I don't stand here today. Also, I don't want anyone to think that this is leave here today knowing you got to go do something about homeless. But we've got to recognize that it is part of the equation for a healthy city that we've got to provide services. So a little bit about what we do at the Union Rescue Mission. I said I went out there and it was great. There's a kind of a method to the madness that Denny and the staff at the time were putting together. And that was kind of a carrot and stick approach, that as men were coming from downtown out to the facility, that it was more than just an overnight experience. It needed to be about helping them and not enable them to do that. They began to look at things like, okay, how long do we let a man come and stay with us? They did some research and found that one of the guys that was staying with them was 30 plus years, kind of making the Union Rescue Mission his home. There was no challenge for him to do anything differently, and he was okay with that. So we have a 30-day in, 30-day out policy now. You get 30 days, and we will work with you. But at the end of 30 days, if you plan on staying with us, that's not your long term, and you're then asked to leave. And we will refer to other agencies if they're willing to take. But we are not a permanent housing solution for someone that says, hey, I'll stay in downtown all day and sleep there at night. But what we also began to do is look at how do we put programs in place so that as a man comes into our care, that we can help get him thinking about what does the future look like. And that's the beginning of real change for many of the men that we deal with, is that they are confronted with they could have a better life and they want a better life, but they don't know how to have that better life. And this is, I'll unabashedly say this, that without Christ you cannot have a better life, and so we are a gospel rescue mission. But more, that is the most important thing. Part of that is not hitting someone over the head with the Bible and saying good luck to you. It's actually walking with them in their need. And so what we do is we take programs like culinary and teaching men and women how to do culinary programs so that they can go get employment. We've worked with Wichita State Tech, and we've had men go out there and become successful. We've got industry partners here in Wichita that will look at our men as they're ready to come into an employment because they're clean and sober and ready to be employed, that are hiring our men, and it's successfully working. We've created, and this is a big part of where I think the future for the Union Rescue Mission lies, is we're heavily involved in social enterprise. We have a KP Cuisine that is a catering service. We figured out that after we trained all these people how to work in a kitchen setting and create food, that there was a big, that was very successful. They created a catering business. Just this past April, we catered a 400-seat lunch for our women at a women's luncheon. We can compete with any. If you want to do a tasting, come on down and we will give you some of the finest food you've ever tasted. And that's the other thing that I'll tell you, is serving people with dignity and giving them something that is worthy does a lot to help change someone's perspective. If all we do is the bare minimum, we give them kind of just marginal food, we give them an uncomfortable mattress, we're not helping them understand that where their worth is. And so we try to do whatever we do great. So if you ever, shameless plug for if you need a caterer, come see us, we'll cater, and it'll be good. And if it's not, I don't know what we'll do. We'll refund your money. We have New Leaf Book Mercantile. Some of you are like, my goodness, what is New Leaf Book Mercantile? I had no idea. This was kind of the one that when I saw it, I go, wow, I had no idea. This social enterprise is a book. We take in used books. If you showed up with a box of books today at the Union, in fact, if you come at 2:45 and you have a chance to get home and get some books, bring them with you and we'll take them off your hands. We have men that will take the books and we'll put it in a warehouse. We've got a large warehouse. Now, I will tell you that we've about a year ago, we had two 53-foot semi-trailers full of books. We can handle any amount of books. Don't worry about giving us too many books. We can handle it. They go in these pallets. They're called Gaylords, and we stack them. And then those are pulled in, and then we bring men that are involved in the programs that are willing, and we have a couple of employees. We have them scan these books. And it's pretty slick because there's a little scanner, and if it has an ISBN barcode, we scan it. Amazon says either green or red. If it's green, it means someone's looking to buy that book. If it's red, it's not worth anything. So green books go in the we're going to sell pile. Red books go in the we're going to recycle pile. It's warehouse work, but it's teaching a very valuable work ethic. And when we go sell those books online, if you ever have bought a used book on Amazon, look to who you're buying that book from, because you might see it being sold by 20 people. We might be one of those 20 people or 20 entities, and we make money off that. We then have a warehouse where we keep the books categorized, we pull them, we ship them. It is a full service business, and it's generating income. And the cool thing about it is that income then pays the men that are working there. It pays to keep the lights on. It's a social enterprise that's not contingent upon someone giving us a donation, rather using us as a legitimate business. Again, I mentioned KP Cuisine. That keeps the lights on. It employs people that are involved in our programs, but it provides a valuable service to the community. If I can tell you that I think that is where we need to focus in social services, is how do we provide value, because these are where we can take great gains. I would if everyone would love to give, whatever money, we'll take it. But long term, my challenge to people is find those social enterprises that are working to sustain recovery and looking at sustaining development and training these people. Wichita is a great industrial city. We have so much that is going on here, and partnering with businesses and looking at how can we create something that is workable so that we get men and women trained. That's a huge piece of recovery, because part of the problem is that as a recovering addict, maybe having come out of prison or whatever you're dealing with, how do you successfully transfer? One of the things that the Kansas Department of Corrections has worked with us on is that they have a real need that when a felon comes out on parole, what do you do with that? And I can speak to that from law enforcement, that we would love to have somebody working with that person, because parole officers, they're so busy, they can't take and invest the time. The Union Rescue Mission, we've been able to take men that have come out on parole, put them in a structured environment, given them some freedom, but kept that structure that they're used to, and then turn around and help get them jobs so that they can successfully facilitate into that area. We have a 24-bed transitional housing unit that just came online in May, where we can do that with more and more people. It's already half full. We opened it in March, and we've got 12 guys with about 3 more. So within probably the next few months, it will be full. And that, again, is a wraparound service. I could go into a lot of different things, and I'm looking at it, and it was pointed out to me I like to talk a lot. But really what I want to do is just kind of open it up and tell you that I'll close my remarks and then open for questions. But I want to say that when I look at why am I here today talking with you, why am I at the Union Rescue Mission, what is the bigger picture, I will tell you this, that I'm a Wichitan. I care about this community deeply. I've had opportunities to leave and I could just never do it. I always felt like this was home. This is where my family is. What's neat for me is to see my kids, always thinking that as a young man I was going to go out and forge new areas. What's been interesting to me is that my kids, and I've got a lot of them if you don't know, I've got like 7 kids right now, and we do foster care, so that may go up today. They want to be here. They're happy to be in Wichita. And we talk a lot about development and keeping good talent here. But that, as a parent, knowing that my kids want to be here, what's important to me is securing a future in Wichita that will be sustainable, that will make a difference. And talking with people that have come into Wichita and are living here and recognize what a jewel we have here. But if we don't manage what we have, and we don't have realistic conversations, and some of them won't be comfortable. One of them has to do with homelessness. People are uncomfortable with it. They don't know what to do. We need to talk about it. But we at the Union Rescue Mission want to be a part of that and really working at how we can help the city change that dynamic so that that's not what we're always talking about, but we know that if it comes up, we can address it. So I'm excited. There are a lot of cool things that I get to be a part of that we're going to lead. I hope a year from now, if you have me back, that some of the conversation will be some of the programs that have been able to be implemented. But I have been told, number one, I talk too much, but number two, you guys like to ask a lot of questions, and they're good questions. So with that, I'm sorry, Kelly, come up here. No, I want Kelly to come up here. Kelly, I'm only going to give Kelly a couple of minutes. But Kelly is a program man. He's in our New Beginnings program. And you're from Mays, right, Kelly? So he's from the area. I just want him to kind of have a minute just to kind of share, and then we'll answer questions as you have them. So Kelly, you're up.
Hi guys, I'm humbled because this time last year I was one of the guys out on the streets that you see walking around with those shopping carts. A year ago this last May I got out of prison, and my home plan when I got out of prison was to the mission. I went there. I didn't like being an overnighter. I didn't like being just somebody that spent the night somewhere and got asked to leave in the morning and then back down here. So, and so I stayed out on the street, I've been one of those guys that have been under a bridge. I've been one of those guys that have asked for money. One of those guys that fly a sign. I grew up around here. I graduated from Mays. I had a good upbringing. Went to college. Started drinking my senior year in high school. And when I got to college, I went on a scholarship. But the drinking and the partying took over. And I had lost interest in going to class and playing basketball. I quit school, and I did that for about 7 times, 7 different colleges. And for the most of my adult life, I've spent in jails and prisons. And yes, I've lied to police. I'm sorry. Not proud of it, but I have. I'm sorry.
Your name really Kelly?
I'm sorry. Just thought we ought to get that clear. This Christmas, I was living out on the street, and I gave my life to Jesus back in '95, but I didn't live for him. And I get emotional, but the mission is important because it's not just shelter. It isn't just shelter. Because I've been in some shelters where it was just shelter. There wasn't people involved to stand beside me. Thank you. There are men and women that just don't know how to stand. Just don't know how to stand. And it is important that society says, they don't even have to understand what that person's going through, but just to be there. And the problem, and I don't mean to point this to anyone, but the problem is society doesn't want to take that time to learn about just standing beside somebody and going through what they're going through. Because when those men see that people are coming there to stand beside, to help, to get involved, it means something. It means something. And you know what? I'm not so quick to go out in the morning and go back out here. I kind of like this, and now my life, has a little bit of meaning, a little bit of purpose. And then God comes in. He's already in, but you start to see that he's in the mix, and he starts to take control. And he starts to say, I created you for something better. okay? And that's why this mission, this godly mission, is so important, because it is Christ-centered. It is Christ-centered. He comes first. And when the men start seeing that, and seeing the society come in, then the change happens. And I know it. I know it by heart. I know it because I've been through it. Now, I'm a part of the mission. Not that I work for them or really speak for them, but I'm in with them. Yeah, let's go out. Let's go help pick up garbage in the neighborhoods and help clean it up. Let's give food out to people who need it that are coming up here on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Nice plug. Yeah. Food boxes. I'm with them because I believe in that purpose, because it changes lives. And I don't know what God has on tap for you guys, but I believe in government. But government needs to get involved.
Amen.
Government needs to get involved. And it's one thing to just lend a hand, but it's it's another to be the helping hand. I can give money, but it means something more when a man or a woman knows that somebody cares. That's why they're helping. They're not just helping them to get them off the street, or helping because they want to see them changed, they want to see a life changed. That's what brings the change. So I'm honored to be here. I grew up and Doug and I were talking earlier. I've always heard about the petroleum room, and now I get to be in there and just think I was on the street. That's the changed life that God brings and can give and will give and is giving. So I would just encourage you guys, after today, don't just put this in the back. Don't just put this in the back. Get involved. Get involved.
Stand up here, Kelly. Hang up here. Talk to us. What can we answer for him? You're a good man.
Okay, question here. What percent of the homeless in Wichita men versus female? And also, isn't it true San Fran and LA have large populations because of their climate? People can live outdoors in those two locations year round.
In Wichita, one of the things that we're trying to get a handle on, and as I've talked with other service providers, the challenge is HUD says what their definition of homelessness is, and it essentially is if you're living without structure and you have not been in that structure with for previous nights, you're homeless, or if you've had 5 incidents of homelessness over. So when you look at that definition, there are several people that will never fall into that definition. And those are people that I call couch surfers that have a friend, family, or someone that will let them stay there. But in that kind of surfing of couches, they may find themselves at a point living in a car. That's what we're seeing more in Wichita. The other part of it is that you will see in and if you haven't been down on either side of Broadway, one of the things that's a challenge is some of these motels that I may or may not live in, and I would rather take a chance living outside. Say a female is willing to live there and willing to do, say, a sex act to stay there. And so what we see is prostitution running down there. That person, that woman is not going to be categorized as homeless either because they have a shelter. That's the difficulty right now of us putting a handle on men versus women in Wichita, Kansas, and what the homeless looks like. On top of that, you're absolutely right. The climate, like in places like San Antonio, Los Angeles, is very, in the other part of Los Angeles that they find is people go out there to follow their dreams. So those are destination places. Wichita isn't really a destination place, as we know, and I'm okay with that. So we're dealing with different dynamics, absolutely. The other part of it is the housing crisis that hit in California really decimated what caused their homeless to bubble up. So when I say I spent some time out there, I look at it and I go, I hope and don't think that we'll ever be at that extreme. But the reality of it is we've got a large manufacturing that is in kind of peril right now with Spirit not being able to produce fuselages, and they're piling up. And what does that mean for Wichita and this region? It means that if we're not thinking that there are people that are living paycheck to paycheck that haven't had a plan, that could very well, if this aircraft thing continues on, couldn't put more people into our area, then we're burying our heads in the sand. And so we've got to be prepared for that. So part of what we're trying to do and what I'm trying to lead is getting good data. HUD has got, and I don't want to disparage HUD, but HUD has their own idea of homelessness and what it means. The reality of it is that some of you are dealing with homelessness and you didn't even realize it because you've maybe taken in someone that doesn't have a place to stay, and out of the kindness and goodness of your heart, that person otherwise would be staying on the street. Great question.
Thank you to both of you gentlemen for being here today. Both your words mean a lot. Wanted to ask a couple of questions. One, can you tell the folks a little bit more about New Beginnings and the graduation coming up, and is that something that they could come to? The other question is, how has, from the Union Rescue Mission not being government funded at all, how has that helped the ministry?
Great question. So New Beginnings is one of our programs. Kelly you're in phase three of New Beginnings. You'll graduate is it the 28th? I got to think, or 29th. So New Beginnings is kind of the flagship program. So a man that comes in overnight will look and see some people that are staying on the mission, and they get to be there 24/7. And those are what we call program men. New Beginnings is the longest program that we have. It's about 7 months. And Kelly is in it. It's where you get a lot of wraparound services in terms of spiritual care, job care, doing some of the hard lifting of how do you get yourself out of this. But you're doing it with case managers, and it has been very successful for us to get men through that. And we have a graduation, because if you get through New Beginnings, you've earned something. And so we will have a graduation, and it's Sunday, and I want to say it's the 28th or 29th. I'm drawing a blank because I don't have my calendar. It is, thank you. So the 28th at Riverlawn Church, from about, and I will get you the times, but I think, is it 2? I don't even, how bad of a CEO am I? I'm going to tell you that I don't even know what time we're graduating. It's 2 or 3, and we've got several men that are going through that. And we make it a big deal because they have put the time in and they are ready for the next level. So that's, when we talk about what are we doing out at the mission, one of the things is that we are putting wraparound services. And most of our candidates for graduation will be eligible to move into our transitional housing unit, which is out there called Eagle's Wing, and you'll see it today if you come or whenever you do. And they have a job, they have a budget. We're going to help them kind of make sure they stay to the budget, that they keep things going. We have another program. It's kind of a stick your toe in the water program called C2C. It's Courage to Change. That's for someone that says, I really want to make a change, but I don't know how, but I think I do. We sit down with them with the case manager and say, okay, you want to make some changes. What are you going to change? And then we hold them accountable for those changes. And a lot of guys that go through C2C, if they successfully navigate it, they move into New Beginnings. But some of them, that's the first real effort that they've tried to make any kind of positive change, and they fail. And so the program's designed that if they fail, that's okay. We're going to be there with them, and then when they're ready to come back, they're more than welcome to come back. And they may fail 2 or 3 times. In fact, about 3 times is typically how many chances or starts it takes before they really decide, I want to make a change. We have working guests. Those are for underemployed people that don't have a place to stay, maybe aren't making enough money. We will allow them to stay on our property. They have to budget, and they have to make sure that if they have fines that are needing to be paid for whatever, that they pay those. They budget money, they put money aside, and we work with them to get them stabilized into that. We have STEPS, which the STEPS program is Steps Towards Economic and Personal Stability. It's simply giving them tools how to budget, how to look at putting their life together in terms of what makes sense. And again, spiritual thread through all of these. But we have the kitchen prep course where we teach them how to work. So we have a lot of industrial programs and ways to get someone. And so the overnight, here's how it typically works. An overnight guest comes in and says, well, how come I have to sleep in the dorm and he gets to sleep there and stay here? Well, he's in a program. Oh. Well, how do I get in the program? And you just carrot and stick. Hey, if you're interested in doing that, here's how you can do it. Can anyone come to our graduation? Yes, absolutely. Riverlawn, we want you to be there. We want you to be a part of the mission. Whether you want to volunteer, whether you want to give, whether you want to do just be involved in what we're doing, we have a lot of ways. And so absolutely, because as Kelly mentioned, it's seeing society come alongside and say, you know what, we're going to work with you, and we're not going to just put you as you're not worthy. We're going to be there. Allows these men and women to come apart. The other thing is, and I didn't say this, we do provide diapers and formulas free of charge to women and children. So if you know someone that needs diapers or formula, we can get help for them. And then we also take food, or we have families come in for food boxes, and we set them up and allow them to come in a grocery style or grocery store style fashion, pick out what they want and leave. And we service, I want to say, about 40 families right now on a weekly basis. So, other questions?
We're going to go over just a little bit, but our usual time is here. Those of you that need to leave, feel free to go ahead, and we'll just keep asking questions and having a good conversation. Our next question.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here. I've got to put a little issue up here. This past year, or actually just a month or two ago, our governor vetoed funding for mental illness and for opioid abuse, along with some other things. There are several in this room, the legislators, we teamed together, but we got it overridden. So the question to you, of the people you see that come to you, how much of it is, gee, I'm just down on my luck? How much of it is mental illness or drug abuse, that kind of stuff? And how does that affect you?
Well, that's a great question. What I will tell you is as I've come aboard and as I've observed, probably 60 to 70% of men that we're helping out have some sort of mental illness, or they're self-describing that as an issue. So what happens is a guest comes in, whether they're an overnight guest typically, or if they're coming in as a referral, they will sit down with one of our shelter advocates. And they are trained to kind of filter out and take some information and kind of categorize what is this individual's chief concerns, why are they here. It's not a diagnostic tool, but it gives us an idea of what we might be dealing with. What we are seeing more and more in our questionnaire is that men are checking off mental illness and those issues in kind of where it's like pervasive, where we have to deal with it. That's been a challenge for us. And part of what we've done is, in fact, we engaged the Mental Health Association of South Central Kansas to come out and sit down. And I will tell you that having been in government, I do not like inefficiencies. I'm kind of like the guy that if there is a way to go without double tracking and just kind of make it, I'm like that. If there's a way to spend $2 and 10 people get benefit out of spending the $2, then let's do that. And what I noticed when we were talking is that there was this disconnect between what the Union Rescue Mission was doing and what we needed in mental health. And when we started talking about it, it was like, well, could you guys do this? And it came down to, we offered them the ability to have their caseworkers show up on a regular basis. We would give them an office. They were going to, we talked about them giving us their forms and we would fill it out. And it was interesting because one of them goes, well, it's about a 2-hour evaluation. And I said, well, is there any way we could get your forms and we could help fill them out so that when you got here, and they were like, well, that would take about an hour off of our time. I was like, well, then we want to take an hour off of your time. So trying to build those partnerships and create opportunity for that synergy is where we need to focus. Government right now is not doing that well. And sometimes what happens is there's just a misunderstanding among the providers. The other part of it is, and this goes to Emil's question about we are not government funded. We've never taken money from the government. Now that's good. That gives us an incredible amount of flexibility, and I would like to keep it that way. And here's why. There is, again, when the government, especially when the federal government puts out money, it's like throwing chum into the water and the fish all go after it. And now you've got agencies that is going to be their operating budget. You know, if they don't get it, they may not be able to function. And so it becomes somewhat cannibalistic on the money. Us at the Union Rescue Mission not being dependent on that money gives us a great deal of flexibility where we can do some things. But we have to be smart in how we're doing that. If we kind of isolate ourselves from everyone else, what we found is people are like, well, they're just kind of snobby, you know, Christian organization, and that's not who we want to be. We want to be good neighbors. And so if we can kind of come in and be the fun uncle that says, hey, you can have the money, but how can we help you? Or would it help you if we do this? Then we want to do that. But we want it to be meaningful. But that's a huge blessing for us to be able to go in this. And again, having come out of government, I definitely don't want us to just say, well, you know, government's on it.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
Real quick, about the mental health issue, life's hard. Life's hard as it is. You know, a person working 40 hours a week, making real good money, life's hard for them too. But now add the factors of a chemical dependency, a broken home, whatever, life gets really hard. And now you add the factor of, I don't want to really live around people, so I'm going to go to the streets and I'm going to do what I do and everything. Now life seems impossible, okay? This is the mental, where that mental health thing really comes in, because that person feels like they're not worth anything, life's against them, there's no hope and everything. And so they do have a mental problem. They have a problem thinking about how they view themselves and their circumstances and everything. So when they come to the mission and everything, and now we have people that want to get involved and say, okay, let's look at this mental health issue, and then some people from society come in and they say, hey, we're here with you, how can we help you and everything. Now that mental health issue starts to change. Okay, now it's not so much about let's get him on medicine, but how he's perceiving himself and his life is changing. Okay, and so that continues, and now, you know what, I don't need to go see you. I don't need to go see ComCare. You know, not that it's bad, but I don't need you anymore because I have this going on. And Jesus is in my life. People are in my life. See where that can be handled, the mental health issue can be handled. So I think it's vital, you know, if there's people not coming in and helping, that mental health issue is going to stay in that one area. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Perfect.
Sorry.
Last question up here.
To what extent are you seeing this, and this is somewhat of a political question, political philosophy, you know, and a changing attitude based on progressives, you know, wanting to do away with values, etc., in education, religion, etc. And as of today, it just came to my attention, there's a church on, I think it's Ada, Oklahoma, and they're forcing them to take down the cross and some of the outside the church. And to what extent would you attribute a lot of this to we aren't promoting the values from call it childhood, schooling, etc., up and support, because obviously your mission is doing that.
Well, I will tell you this, that I think they're from just a structural standpoint, and I know that when I say this, I create some controversy. The family as we know it, that nuclear family, is being destroyed, and we are seeing the results of it as we go today. The problem that I see is that if we don't understand that, for instance, the foster care system is where it is right now, and I am involved in that very heavily for the last 11 years being a foster parent, seeing the reason why these kids and the trauma that they're in, it's horrible. And it's because mom or dad is unable, and number one, it's typically dad's not even around. We don't know who dad is. And then we don't know, mom is struggling to be a provider for the child, but in ways that are destructive. So if you look at this kind of big picture, we've got men that are coming to us after a life of just bad choices, bad decisions. They've are at an end, and they're dealing with, we're confronting them with the issues of, are you treating women right? Is there someone that you need to repair a relationship? Do you need to be a father to a child? And self-confrontation there. The piece of where you have women in trafficking and in homeless situations who don't know how to and can't make good decisions because they are in abusive relationships. And then the kids that find themselves. We've got to learn, or we got to work and learn, how do we put those families back together? And that's not a popular, no one wants to look at it as a holistic. You know, if you want to know I guess my dream is that we'll have communities where we actually take men from us, women that are battered or otherwise, and their husbands are there, and kids that are in foster care. We put them back together in a home, and we got mentoring families that can help them see what a healthy family looks like. The problem is that I see right now is that everyone wants to advocate for kids. It's all about the kids, or it's all about the women, or it's all about the men, and no one's talking about, well, what about the family? And let's put the family back together. Did that answer your question?
Basically.
Okay.
Mr. Doug Nolte and Mr. Kelly Conley.
Thank you.